It was a bitterly cold evening, the kind where the wind cuts through even the thickest jackets, and people hurry along the streets, eager to escape the chill. Inside a small cozy diner on the corner of the street, the air was warm and filled with the comforting scent of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon. The soft hum of conversation, mixed with the clatter of plates, and the occasional burst of laughter from a group of regulars. It was just another night at the diner, until he walked in. He moved slowly, hesitating at the entrance, as if unsure whether he was welcome. His clothes were worn, his shoes scuffed, and his face lined with exhaustion. The few customers who noticed him exchanged quick glances, then turned away, pretending not to see. But one person did see, Emily, a waitress who had been working at the diner for almost 3 years. She was used to all kinds of customers, but something about this man made her pause. He wasn't just another face in the crowd. There was a weight in his eyes, something deeper than hunger. As he shuffled toward a booth in the corner, Emily grabbed a menu and walked over, offering him a kind smile. "Can I get you something to eat?" she asked, her voice gentle but warm. The man looked up, clearly surprised. I don't have enough money," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. His hands fidgeted on the table, as if bracing for rejection. Emily didn't hesitate. "Don't worry about that," she said. "Order whatever you want. It's on me." For a moment, the man just stared at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. Then, after a long pause, he nodded. "Just a sandwich and some coffee, please." Emily nodded back and walked away, feeling the curious eyes of some customers on her. She knew what they were thinking. Why waste money on someone who couldn't pay? But she didn't care. She had been raised to believe in kindness, and if buying one meal for a stranger could make even a small difference, then it was worth it. She brought him his meal, and as he ate, she checked on him now and then, making light conversation. He was quiet at first, answering in short sentences, but slowly he opened up. His name was James. He had once had a normal life, a job, a family, but things had fallen apart, one bad event leading to another until he had nothing left. Now he spent his days searching for work and his nights hoping to find a safe place to sleep. Emily listened without judgment, nodding as he spoke. She didn't pry or ask uncomfortable questions. She just let him talk, and for the first time in a long while, James felt seen. When he finished his meal, he looked at her with gratitude, shining in his tired eyes. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You didn't have to do this." Emily smiled. "Everyone deserves a little kindness." James nodded, still looking overwhelmed. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a few coins. "It's not much, but..." Emily gently closed his hand over the change. "Keep it," she said softly. James hesitated, then finally nodded. He stood up, gave her one last look, and walked out into the night. Emily thought that was the end of it. Just another small act of kindness, another day at work. She had no idea that the man she had helped would soon change her life in a way she never could have imagined, because James wasn't just any homeless man, and the gift he was about to give her, it was something she never saw coming. The next few days passed like any other for Emily. She worked long shifts at the diner, smiled at customers, and did her best to get by. Life wasn't easy. Her paycheck barely covered rent, and with bills piling up, she often had to skip small luxuries just to make ends meet. But she never complained. She had learned to find joy in the little things, like the laughter of an old couple who came in every morning, or the way the smell of fresh coffee filled the air before sunrise. Still, she couldn't shake the thought of James. She found herself wondering where he had gone. If he had found somewhere warm to sleep that night, Something about him had stuck with her, a feeling she couldn't quite explain. Maybe it was the look in his eyes when he thanked her, like he hadn't been shown kindness in a long time. Or maybe it was just that she knew what it felt like to struggle, to feel like the world had moved on without you. Then, something strange happened. A week later, a man in a suit walked into the diner. He was well-dressed, the kind of customer who looked out of place in a small-town diner like this. His shoes were polished. His watch gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and his sharp eyes scanned the room. Before they landed on Emily, he walked straight to the counter where she was refilling a coffee pot and smiled. "Emily, right?" he asked. She frowned slightly, confused. "Yes." The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "This is for you." Emily hesitated. "I think you have the wrong person." He shook his head. "No, it's from a friend." A strange feeling settled in her stomach as she took the envelope and carefully opened it. Inside was a handwritten note and something that made her breath catch. A check. Not for a few dollars, not for a couple hundred, but for an amount that made her legs go weak. $10,000. Emily's heart pounded as she read the note. "Emily, you didn't know who I was when you helped me, and you didn't care. That night, you gave me something more valuable than a meal. You reminded me that kindness still exists. I haven't forgotten. This is my way of saying thank you. Use it however you need. James." Emily felt the room spin. She read the note. Again, her hands shaking. James, the same man who had sat in that booth. Exhausted and hungry. The man she had assumed had nothing. The man in the suit, sensing her shock, spoke again. "James isn't just anyone. He's a businessman. Or rather, he used to be." Emily looked up, still trying to process. "Used to be." The man nodded. "A few years ago, he lost everything. A bad business deal, a series of personal losses, one thing after another, until he had nothing left. He disappeared off the radar. People assumed he was gone for good." He gestured toward the check. "But thanks to people like you, he found the strength to rebuild." Emily swallowed hard. "I didn't do anything special." The man smiled. "That's exactly why it meant so much." The next few days were a blur. Emily kept looking at the check, wondering if it was real. She debated what to do. Was it too much to accept? Was this some kind of mistake? But deep down, she knew it wasn't. It was real. James had meant it. But as much as the money could help, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about the money. It was about something bigger, and she had no idea that this was only the beginning. For days, Emily struggled to wrap her mind around what had happened. She had never expected anything in return for the small act of kindness she had shown James. She had simply done what felt right, and yet here she was, holding a check that could change her life. At first, she considered using the money to pay off her debts, maybe even save a little for the future. But something inside her told her that wasn't the best way to honor what James had done. He hadn't just given her money. He had given her a chance to do something meaningful. One evening, as she walked home from the diner, she passed by an old community shelter. She had seen it many times before, but tonight she stopped. The windows were dark, the front door locked. A faded sign read, "Closed due to lack of funding." Emily had never paid much attention to it before, but now something clicked. The next day, she made a decision. Instead of using the money for herself, she donated it to reopen the shelter. She met with local volunteers, spoke to community members, and used every dollar wisely, fixing up the space, restocking supplies, and making sure people in need had somewhere to go. She put in long hours, sometimes after her shifts at the diner, determined to make a real difference. 1 week later, the doors of the shelter reopened, and the very first person to walk through them, James. He stood in the doorway, looking around, his eyes wide with disbelief. When he finally spotted Emily, he let out a breathless laugh. "You used it for this?" Emily smiled. "You gave me a gift. I just wanted to pass it on." James shook his head, clearly overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she replied softly. For a moment, they just stood there, two people whose lives had unexpectedly intertwined in the most unusual way. Then James did something Emily never expected. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "I wanted to give you something too," he said, handing it to her. Confused, she opened it and found a letter inside. "Emily, I've spent the last few years feeling invisible, like I didn't matter. That night at the diner, you reminded me that I did. You didn't know my story, but you still treated me with kindness. Because of you, I found the strength to rebuild my life. I have a home again, a job, and I wanted to give you something in return. Consider this my way of saying thank you, properly this time. James." Emily's hands trembled as she unfolded another piece of paper tucked inside. It was another check, this time for even more than the first, enough to change not just her life, but the lives of countless others. Tears filled her eyes as she looked up at James. "I don't know how to thank you," James smiled. "You already have." That night, as Emily locked up the shelter, she realized something. She had spent so long just trying to get by, to survive. But now, she had something bigger, a purpose. And it had all started with one simple act of kindness. Sometimes, the smallest gestures can create the biggest ripples. And sometimes, helping someone else ends up changing your own life in ways you never expected.